Hi, my dear friends. I was
Hi, hello.
I wasn't getting to unmute my mic here. How are you guys?
Fine.
Good.
Hi, that's great. So
Hello.
we're here today for our third day of the book Missionaries of Light. We are almost finishing this book. We have loads of interesting things to talk about tonight. This is a very rich book in terms of information, technology, spiritual explanation, loads of things. And today we have a bunch of those things to talk about. So before we start, our dear friend Norah will bring us some prayer.
You're sweet. All right. Let us close our eyes or just be in a state of peace and calm. Dear Mother, Father God, thank you so much for this evening, for bringing us together in this beautiful circle of love, inspiration, and joy. We ask that you enlighten our thoughts and that you help us raise our vibrations as we study these beautiful chapters with the complexity that they come with. We ask definitely for lots of discernment and that we can compartmentalize the information. With that, we say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory, forever and ever. And so be it. With that, we ask permission to begin.
Thank you so much. That was nice, very nice. So we're in chapter, without any further ado, we're in chapter 11, which is called Intercession. This chapter is very nice, very interesting, and it's actually about intercession. What all those powers that we have when we are practicing that type of thing. Um, so this chapter is really long, and Chris and Nora's chapters are long as well. So I'm gonna try to be the more loyal I can to the book to bring what the book tries to tell us. But we do recommend that everybody that is listening to us watching this read the entire book, because we are not able to pass all the information that the book brings us. So we're in chapter 11. In this chapter, Alexandre receives a request for news about the spiritual situation of a man who died under strange circumstances. The request is made by the newly disembodied wife during physical sleep. The text shows that the work of Alexandre and Andrea Luis to get to know the real situation of the discarnated brother and his family, and thus to be able to help them. So that's where we are. And the chapter is quite long, as I've said before, but it's beautiful. It's really beautiful, this chapter. Um, of course, we recommend again you guys to read it fully, and we're going to try to take some really interesting parts to explain what it has for us. Let's draw attention to those parts here. At the family's house, Andrea Luis notices the presence of 6 disembodied entities having meals together with the incarnates. Alexandre clarifies the situation. He says this: those who discarnate in conditions of excessive attachment to those they left on the crust, finding in them the same handcuffs, almost always remain connected to the house. This is very interesting, powerful, and meaningful. To domestic situations and to the family's vital fluids. They feed with their relatives and sleep in the same rooms where they disconnected where they disconnected from the physical body. So we all have heard loads of hunting houses stories. We're starting to understand them. Death does not change people or make them wiser, and we've seen that before. It is worth meditating on Alexander's words on this. He says this: physical death is not a miraculous bath which converts the bad into good and the ignorant into the wise from one moment to the next. It's very nice. There are disembodied people who cling to domestic environments like ivy to walks. Others, however, and in large numbers, revolt. They find themselves in the circles of their own ignorance and constitute the so-called legions of darkness, which confronted Jesus himself through different obsessions. They organize themselves diabolically from criminal cooperatives, and woe to those who become their companions, fall on the evolutionary path through neglect of divine opportunities. They are suffering slaves of these transitory but terrible powers of the shadows in captivity that can be characterized by long duration. So this is really interesting because we need to see this flesh body that we have literally as some clothes. We can change the clothes, but we're gonna be the same person. We can change bodies, another incarnation. If we're not evolving, we're gonna be the same person with a different clothes. This is really interesting and meaningful. In this slaughterhouse visited by Alexandre and Andre Luis, it was possible to see a large number of disembodied people in a pitiful condition trying to drink the blood of dead animals. Look at this. Noticing Andrea's astonishment at the scene, Alexandre makes the necessary clarification. Are you watching, Andre? This is Alexandre speaking. These unfortunate brothers who cannot see us due to the deplorable situation of brutishness and inferiority are sucking the forces of the animal's blood plasma. They are hungry that cause pity. This is really, really, really interesting because here in Brazil, we hear a lot about rituals where people drink animal blood and they have those not that great relations with spirits. And of course, we respect all kinds of religion, but we hear a lot about this here in Brazil. And that amount of materialism should represent something that is not spiritual, but like spirits that are almost living more in the flesh than us. So, still in chapter 11, the disembodied brother is taken to a hospital in the cross itself. Alexandre once again explained the situation. He says this: in the circle of antagonistic vibration of the inhabitants of the crust, it is not possible to locate a complete institution of assistance. The relief work in this way must suffer undeniable defiancy. This house, however, is a mobile hospital that counts on abnegation of many companions. This is very nice. So we see the good forces working always. And the incarnate sister receives help to get a job and thus be able to support her family. Andrea marvels at the concern of the spiritual group in obtaining material help for her. This part of the book is very pretty. When our earthly companions make themselves worthy, we can collaborate for their benefit with all the resources at our disposal, as long as our cooperation does not impede their freedom of conscience. This is very, very pretty because, of course, the good spirituality wants to help us, but they're not gonna stray us from what we came here to do, what we came here to live. They're not gonna stray us from our mission. This is very important. And a couple of times we ask in our prayers for things that our spirits do not need. We must notice that the story told by Andre Luis begins with a simple request for news about a disembodied person. This is very interesting. To meet the request, countless spirituality workers are involved in caring for the discarnated and the discarnate's family. After all, no sincere prayer goes unanswered. It's very pretty. So this chapter um, really brings us this huge perspective about what happens when we pray, and there's spiritual world like moving and trying to help us and trying to do something and trying to find ways to be here for us. This is really, really, really pretty. And as we've said before, this book, those actually book, all the books written by Andrea Luis, dictated by Dan, psychographed by Chico, they really have, although they look really technological, they seem like this high tech kind of vibe, but they really are about the gospel from our Master Jesus. This is really pretty. And then we enter chapter 12, which is called Preparing for New Life Experiences. In this chapter, Andrea Luis visits the reincarnation planning sector at Nosolar. This is very nice, and this sector is really interesting. There's loads of things. There are countless lessons learned by our spiritual friend. Let's talk about a couple of things that he brings for us. Um, he says this: a large percentage of reincarnations in the crust takes place in standardized ways for everyone in the field of purely evolutionary manifestations, but another percentage does not follow the same program. As the soul rises in culture and knowledge, and consequently in responsibility, the process individual reincarnationist is more complex, evading the general expression, of course. In view of this, the higher spiritual colonies maintain special services for the reincarnation of workers and missionaries. This is very nice to see. And when we were studying the book, the messengers, we did see this huge work trying to plan a new incarnation for those that would be the messengers. All the work they put, all those effort. That's really interesting because I do think that when a messenger, a missionary from Jesus comes, something really special may happen and we may be very blessed by them. So, of course, the spirituality will try to not take those difficult times from their life, because a couple of times they are very needed, but try to help them, especially when it comes to maintaining the focus. It's very pretty. In the planning of reincarnations, a careful study of the physical body to be used is carried out. It is a real engineering work where servers with different specialties participate. This is very pretty. The user of the future body or people who are close to him participate in this process. It's very nice. We can like imagine what they were thinking when they were building Chico Xavier's body, because that body was not normal at all. It was very special. The entities under our eyes are workers of our sphere, interested in close reincarnations. Not all of them are directly linked to the same purpose because a large part is in the intercession work, obtaining favors of this nature for close friends. The wide scrolls that lead are small maps of organic forms, elaborated by guides of our plan, specialized in biological knowledge on earthly existence, according to the degree of advancement of the reincarnating future and according to the service assigned to it in the carnal body. It is necessary to establish adequate plans for the essential purposes. This is very nice. Andrea asks if the law of physiological heredity influences the formation of the physical body as the incarnates think. This is a very interesting thing. And look, I'm going to transcribe the book again. It works with an inalienable dominion over all beings in evolution, but naturally suffers the influence of all those who achieve superior qualities to the general environment. The higher forces can imprint certain modifications to matter from the embryological activities, determining favorable alterations to the work of redemption. It's very interesting because when we have here in Brazil this book about Mother Mary, the mother of Jesus, from a very special medium. Chris knows him, and João Nunes Maya. It's a beautiful book that tells her story, and we see the work that she had to do when she was conceiving Jesus because she couldn't have one bad thought. So of course Jesus couldn't like have any type of mom. This should be a special lady, but we do see that this physical bond between mother and child, of course, the matter matters in this case. It's really interesting. And of course those high spirits, those that are really high in morality, they can like be more independent from their parents. It happens. We have seen, like, for example, Chico Xavier is a great example of that. He had a very materialistic father, although his mom was like an angel, but he had a very materialistic father and he was an angel as well. Going further, it works. No, I'm here. Andre then wants to know how the incarnation of spirits takes place, who, like his father, return to the carnal sphere in very bitter conditions. This is really interesting. If he were a creature of enlightened reason, though enlightened, he remained after death in a state of fall and must not have returned to the blessed opportunity of the physical school without the intercessory work and strong help of well loved hearts on our plane. In that case, he will have received the cooperation of benefactors situated in higher positions, who will have endorsed the promises in their regenerating service. If he was, however, a creature in a purely evolutionary effort, a circumstance in which he would not have returned in bitter conditions, he said, naturally with the blessed assistance of the spiritual workers who watch in the crust for the execution of the reincarnationist works in natural processes. It's really interesting. And from the past books, we've seen that André Louis' mom, she really worked for his father's no reincarnation, especially when we were reading No Solar. Um, Going further, André hears the word complaced and wants to know what it means. This is another thing really interesting. It is the title that designates the rare brothers who took advantage of all the constructive possibilities that the terrestrial body offered them. In general, almost all of us, on returning to the carnal sphere, miss very important opportunities in the waste of physiological forces. This is very sad. Something useful for us and for others, but sometimes we despise 50, 60, 70% of, and often even more of our possibilities. On many occasions, the aggravating factor of having moved the sacred energies of life in inferior activities and degraded the intelligence and subtlety the heart. Those, however, who mobilize the physical machine in the manner of the most faithful work conquer very expressive rights in our planes. This is really pretty. The completist is the completist in the qualify of loyal worker and productive can choose at will the future body. This is very, very interesting. When it pleases to return to the crest on missions of love and enlightenment, or receives an ennoble vehicle for the continuation of his tasks on the way to higher circles of work. This is really, really pretty. So if we take care of this body that we have, right now. Maybe someday we're going to be able to choose the body that we're going to reincarnate with. This is very, very, very special. I have a couple of more things to say, and I'm already finishing. Andre is warned about the influence of emotions and thoughts on the health of the physical body. This is really important. Human medicine will be very different in the future, and we have said this here, when science will be able to understand the extent and complexity of mental factors in the field of disease of the physical body. Very rarely are the affections directly related to the cycle not found. All organs are subordinate to the ancestry. Excessive preoccupation with pathological symptoms increases illness. Great emotions can heal the body or annihilate it. If this can happen in the sphere of ordinary activities of physical struggles, imagine the enormous field of observations that the spiritual plane offers us, where thousands of disembodied souls are transferred every day in regrettable conditions of imbalance of mind. In healing works to spiritual providences where Christian love plays the greatest role. At the end of the observation work, Andret did not fail to notice the correctness and beauty of the divine laws. Everything in the universe works in harmony. And for a few days, this is Andrea Luis saying, and for a few days I remained there in the Meritus institution, understanding that human existence is not an accidental act, and that in the plan of divine order, justice exercises its ministry every day, obeying the high design that it orders to minister the gifts of the life to each by his works. Seeing the immense work done by spirituality and the little concern that many have for life, I got really grateful to the Master Jesus by reading this. This is really impressive and special. I have finished mine chapters.
Wow. Oh, I can't imagine the technology behind the reincarnation ministry. So let's start the chapter 13, reincarnation. After spending a week in the reincarnation ministry, learning about the reincarnation process as João talked, André with Alexandre go to Adelino and Raquel's home, where Sigismundo reincarnation would be taking place in order to the approximation work. They arrived at the couple's house in the evening while the two were having dinner with the little son, about 3 years old, and Herculano, another mentor, was waiting for them. Sigismundo, also at home, was very upset and sad. Alexandre said to him, "It should be a reason to happiness to receive a sublime chance for redemption and repair our debts, and he must change his mental state." Alexandre explained to Herculano and André that it is usual for some spirit to be imbalanced when they are about to reincarnate. Alexandre started watching Adelino and Raquel, and Adelino was sullen, speaking to Raquel only monosyllables, and Raquel was making an effort to talk about nothing. Alexandre saw that Adelino's spiritual condition was very low, without happiness and love. And with this state of mind, the work of the approximation could be not be done. Alexandre realized that he has to change the Adelino mental state, so he approached the child and put his right hand over his heart, and the little boy started smiling with a new light in his blue eyes and say calmly, The boy, under, under Alexander's intuition, asked his mother why his father was so sad, and this action touched Adelino so very deep for the tenderness of the son, of his son, felt the dark clouds of his thoughts make him smile. The little boy also invited Adelino to pray together at night, saying that his mom, Raquel, charged him every night to pray for him. The words changed Adelino's mental state. He was sad because he had been having repeated nightmares with the shadow approaching to him as a man begging for help, but the feeling is that he wants to kill him. In this part, we can better understand the intervention that Alexandre made through the boy's heart, because Adelino said to Raquel that made their son was right, because the life problems made him forget faith in God, make him stop praying. Late at night, while the family prayed, three spiritual friends arrived invited by Herculano to help with the work approximation. As soon as the couple fell asleep, the work began. When Rachel get off her physical body, every very enlightenment with thought released the presence of the majority in the bedroom. She was welcomed by one dose of spirit. She was her maternal grandmother, and Adelino gets out of his body in thought having the same light as Raquel. He saw Sigismundo and got terrified again, but Alexandre appears to him, light up strong rays of light, and Adelino gets down immediately on his knees, understand that because of the prayer, a spirit of light came to help in your case. This part is so beautiful. Alexandre said to Adelino not to be afraid. We should always welcome those who ask us for help. Change the vibration of the thoughts received with the charity those who that you still cannot receive with the same Jesus love. Put yourself in his place. We are all brothers. Open the doors of your heart to those who look for you in the name of the Father. Extend your fraternal hands and welcome him in the name of Jesus. Adelino shake hands with the Sigismundo, who said, "Forgive me, brother. God bless you." Andrea tells us that was soon as Adelino forgives Sigismundo, the dark mist that surrounded him dissolved completely, lighting up Adelino with a bright, soft light. Alexandre explained that Adelino must rest because the low magnetism of his thoughts destroyed the seminal substance, poisoning the genes, turning our work hard, and it's necessary to shift the concept of the sex. We must replace the expression sexual union for union of qualities. All universal life is based on this phenomenon. The fecundation of the soul is more important for the creation. After a week, they returned to their homes, and Adelino was refreshed mentally and spiritually. Along with Herculano, a team of constructor spirits that would assist in the fetal formation of Sigismundo. Alexandre studies the chromosomal maps of the future body with the team of constructor spirits and explained to Andre that he was reading the geographic of the genes in chromosome striation to know that kind of magnetic resource they would use for the organization of hereditary properties. Alexandre saw Sigismund a little bit sad and gave some words of comfort in order to change his mental state. At the same time, he started to smile and breathe more calmly again. Next night, Adelino displayed a different spiritual light surrounded by a clear environment of optimism, kindness, and joy. Alexandre explained to André saying that our presence is not necessary at the moment of the cellular union. Such moments of the conjugal bed are sublime and inviolable in the well-founded homes. You know that fertilization of the maternal egg only takes place a few hours after. The male element has a long trip before reaching the egg. This part is so cool. The constructor spirits began to magnetize work on the Sigismund's spiritual body. Alexandre said to him, turning the prey, turning into the pre-infant form with us, visualize your return to maternal earth fresh. Remember the fraternal format, make yourself a smiler. Imagine you'll be a child again in order to learn to be a man. André was surprised to see that under the magnet inflection for, for Alexandre and the constructors, Sigismundo's perispiritual form was fading away. André could see that everybody was working mentally to reduce him, the Sigismundo, and seeming to less and less conscious. André was astonished to see Sigismundo form turn in the child. Alexandre explained to André that not all reincarnation processes happen that way. There are several processes depend on each case. There are spirits that don't even need our help. In this case, Herculano will stay with Sigismundo until the end of reincarnation process that only ends when they turn 7 years old. After that, Herculano will still follow him, but a little far. Alexandre invites Haeckel's grandmother, who is there as one of constructor spirits to the final procedures, puts Sigismundo in the form of a baby in his arms. With the, with the parents out of body, more than 100 friends from our sphere had filled the room and the bed with flowers of light. There were, they were allowed to come just to decorate the environment and to congratulate Sigismundo. A crowd of very bright flowers came down from above, brought by superior spirits, and Alexandre put it on Rachel's head. Her grandmother delivers the baby to Raquel's arms. Raquel holds the baby, presses it against her heart, and the two become one. Helped by the mentor's magnet process, the chosen sperm is carried magnetically to the mother's egg. Alexandre adjusts to reduce the form of Sigismundo as a baby to the fertilization egg that appeared as a light of bulb that began to move and the life began again. Just the end of the so beautiful.
It's really beautiful. I'm like, okay, and I had to take notes because the next chapter is kind of technical. It gets really sciencey, um, but it's very similar to the ending of the chapter. So let me, first of all, any comments?
No, just please read the book. It's a lot of
It
information.
Yes, there's a lot of details inside, and actually
Yes,
we do have to study it. Yeah, yeah.
a really nice book, and we have talked about that here, is the book, and again, the same medium, João and Ismael, but the book about the history of St. Francis of Assisi. They really bring this amazing detail related history about when he was conceived. It is very, very, very pretty and full of details. It's very nice. It's worth reading.
I need to read the books. Are they in Portuguese only? I keep saying I need to find a friend. that's willing to talk to me for 30 minutes every week so I can get to reading some Portuguese.
Those two horrible friends here that don't help her, that don't help her with her Portuguese.
And we're doing the English thing. It's too funny. But anywho, it was a good break so we can stretch and keep going because now we're gonna have a science little lesson, which it was very beautiful. Because it was like the science with the spirituality, kind of like the beautiful things that are happening. And the title is called Watch Care. And really, that's taking from Chris' beautiful words of how everybody's kind of taking care of. Okay, here we go with the names. We're going to call him Segismundo? Segismundo? Yes. Okay. So,
Sigismundo.
Segismundo. There you go. I get it. Okay. So, how do I start? So, they're at Raquel's house again, and Apuleo is explaining to Andre this organic engineering process of like the fertilization and implantation and the beginning, and then towards the end it's like the whole gestation happens, which is really really beautiful. um, it does say that we kind of have to keep an open mind because we're not getting like this is not a genetics or a biology anatomy course, or embryology. This is like it has snippets of that physical explanations, but we also are getting like a what's going in behind the scenes, which is something that's really beautiful. um, so, but just so that we can understand, because now he's going to explain what's the process of when the egg and the male cell, they call it the male cell with the sperm, when they come together, and kind of like what's happening on the other side. But basically what happens in the physical explanation, right? The sperm and the egg, they meet at the fallopian tubes, and then of course that one mighty male cell um, comes and attracts the egg, whether the egg, they come together and they fertilize, so they join to make a single cell embryo, which they know as a zygote. And as it divides, it forms blastocyst cells, which is basically like these all just forming bunch of cells, and they keep dividing and dividing. And once the embryo is implanted into the uterus, all of a sudden it's there, we can't go back, right? And then so the woman, she starts showing lots of different changes. It got the hormonal changes like the HCG hormone, which is normally the pregnancy hormone, which is it's beautiful to think about this. If you ever friends get a chance, go on a YouTube video because this is like a very basic version, but if we looked at the details and everything, it's life. Everything in there is alive, and that's really important because as we read this, the spiritual part is actually looking through this. So even though when I took genetics and biology, we talk about this stuff in detail, we don't really get like most of the explanations. It's always evolution does this, right? But we're getting a behind the scenes of what is really happening. What is this organic engineering? And the beauty of this is that this book has that terminology. The reason I brought in that physical science is because, like, this book was written a while back, it was psychographed, and again, someone who is kind of like on the edge of like, the science, that this science terms are actually used. That was powerful. Second thing to know that when this is happening, the fertilization, the spirits on the other side, they're like checking in, they're saying we need to make sure that the embryo goes in, or that implementation goes in, so that way everything does not fail, and they can start the reincarnation or other planning that Chris brought in as it's happening, right? Especially to make sure that the collaboration from the realm helps the commitment that they're going to have made. And then they go into huge 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 detail about you know um, what needs to happen in order for that to go through, and to be careful for there to not be miscarriages. um, but because we are following Raquel's pregnancy, we can, if anybody wants to read, you can go in there. They talk a little bit about that miscarriage and etc. Okay, so then he asks about, oh my gosh, that's like kind of like a very simple explanation. So what's happening? And then he's like, hold up, I'm about to give you some steps. First thing to remember, Andre, passivity does not mean absence of cooperation, right? So, in other words, um, it doesn't mean that nothing is happening. There's a lot of stuff that's happening. So, the first thing, and I think João touched up on this, is the mom's part in what is happening, right? And says she received Segimundo into her perispiritual organism. So when this happens, and I wrote it down, okay, this is very, very interesting. Um, she mobilizes the natural powers of her mind. Okay, so remember, this is now the spiritual component of it. In other words, as she's doing this with her mind, she places that mold right in the uterine, and it is supervised by subconscious mechanical activity. And then this automatic process connects they use the word multimillenary, or the many experiences of the reincarnated soul. And this process where the mom is, in other words, the mom is mentalizing it, it goes into the area that mold is created and things are connected. It's an adaptation to creative energy process that a woman goes, which I thought it was so beautiful. So I'm not a mom, but I actually close my eyes and I imagine like seeing this. Wow, like I'm mentalizing this. Like what a beautiful connection. It's beyond. I can't explain. When this happens at this mold and this connection, I love how they talked about the baby nourishment. This is really, really cute, right? So now baby Sergimundo, right, or the baby, uses his perispirit to absorb, right? So this is the feeding component of this, right? It says mental nourishment is what a baby feels in the surrounding areas, right? So from whatever field is created. So that's why, in other words, it's important to be in that um, peaceful, calm, higher vibrations around the baby, because that's the nourishment that is going to the baby. And I know that there's some moms that do like the pregnancy, the music where they're pregnant, right? Because that music is really soothing the baby. So it's kind of from that angle that I thought was really, really beautiful. He says, in this category of explanation, they offer to say that um, the male cell that reaches to the egg is due to magnetic attunements, which Chris already shared with us in the previous one, right? So it's not who is superior or who it's not. It has to do with that magnetic thing, which comes back again because of the the plan, the reincarnatory plan, in other words. So once this information of the chromosomes happens and everything, they carry all that genetic information, believe it or not, they explain that the spirits are behind this, right? We get from mom, from dad, the 23 pairs of chromosomes with 46 in total. So we have to say that the female cell or the egg has influence as to what to fertilize. So this orchestra is arranged by the biogenetic law. So that this is where the spirits come in to make sure that this magnetic attraction happens because of that purpose behind it. All right. So then Andre has a session of this mental mold that's happening. So we have mom Raquel and we do have Adelino dad, right? With a technician. So mom, known as the medium of life, she's mentally creating that mold, right? And with the technicians helping and the dad, he's also helping in this magnetic path. So it's really beautiful, and this happens in a few hours once the mold is set, right? And of course, here in Planet Earth, baby says 9 months. And in all of this, for 21 days, baby Segismundo cannot really be visited because again, he's in that state. And then Andre goes into this beautiful, beautiful description. I really recommend friends to read it, of how everything happens now, right? From what we see here in the physical signs, that that biological what is it called? Like the biological steps. I just want to make sure where I'm in my book so I don't get lost, right? The organization. It goes from cells, tissues, organs, organ system, and eventually the human, which was he was following along all of this. Um, and he was so just amazed. That was the whole bottom like that. It was just very powerful. I don't think him as a doctor as well I can imagine, just being um, just knowing the physical science, and all of a sudden he's seeing the spiritual component and all the magnetics and all the lights and everything that's happening, right? Because now again, as this is happening, Raquel has really, really good energies around her, which I think we had already said from the previous chapter. Um, the beautiful thing to remember is, and I think this is just, we already know this, the spiritist, is just that as Raquel has the baby, there's like this little cord. And so baby Segismundo is connected. And it's beautiful because Raquel really loved the baby and she would just kind of hold on to him. And that was really nice. The mentor Herculano and Alexandre were there the whole entire way and they followed him all the way to the end. And it says here, the initial work of reincarnation is ready, the full work with a complete integration of our friend into the physical elements, which will only take 7 years' time, right? Which is kind of what's happened from chapter 8. So that is a beautiful, beautiful manifestation of like what's happening behind the scenes, right? I mean, a lot of magnetic energy, a lot of forces, and just reiterating the fact, even if we're not the mom pregnant, and we're even that being around a pregnant mom, so important to keep that vibration, to keep it at peace, because they will feel it. So it's very important. And they do go into detail about the whole mental stuff. So chapter 15 is not a happy ending, I think. It's called Entitled Failure. And so now we have a case study of baby Volpini with mom Cesarina. And mom in this chapter, she's not like Raquel. She doesn't want to have a baby. This is a third pregnancy, and she just wants to party, and she doesn't want to commit. Her heart is not into it. But throughout the chapter, Andre does describe, I mean, for like, because we were short on time, but he likes to describe, always telling us that around her, there are other spirits to remind us again that we make decisions, but we also attract that. So around her, there are these spirits that are constantly like, no to baby Voltini, no, no, no. And in one of these efforts, Apuleo is like, let's try to influence a friend. And her name was Francisca, right? And she says that Francisca is an old lady and she's the owner of the house. She takes Mama Cesarina as her daughter, and she's telling her, please don't go to this party. Don't go, because if she went to this party, chances are that baby Volpini was not going to make it. Well, no matter how much um, Mom Francisca was trying to tell her not to go to this party, the energy around Mom Cesarina was too strong. So she ends up going to the party. Well, Andre and Alfuleo go to the bar where they're having this birthday party, and even mom drinks. Okay, so she's drinking, she's having a good time, she's not really taking this serious. Um, and so at that moment, what the team decides to do is, you know what, this is not a good ending. So they described how they disconnected the reincarnating spirit from the maternal sanctuary. Um, and when, so how did they, here it is. So first, um, okay, I need to take a deep breath on this one. This was super cute. So the baby was still connected to mom Cesarina, right? And so he says here that he was like semi conscious because of the energy. Next, I saw Apileo apply magnetic passes to the entire uterine area. After this, he says that he entrusted Andre to hold baby Volpini in his hands. So you can imagine, right? Like all this process and Andre's holding this baby here, and just the emotions that knowing that this baby was not going to make it, so they had to take him to a special place, and they do. So what happens when this is happening behind the scenes on the physical realm? Well, mom Cesarina gets very sick, and she ends up going to the hospital and gives a stillborn child, gives birth to a stillborn child, and is in a very serious condition. So that's the case. So the two cases are so different, which Andre makes a point, just to paraphrase, how in the first case, Raquel, the mom, was involving the baby in that magnetic beautiful fluids, right? The dad, and we can see all the mentors. When it came to Cesarina's case, he even describes the room had like blotches, dark things that he himself was like, wow, this is so different. And so the vibrations were different, the thoughts were different. And so they had two very different endings. And just to think about everything that happens, the science that's happening in this poor baby. I mean, wow, because a lot of energy goes through this. We can probably have a whole series on just the gestation, fertilization, and all the energy that's going and all the help from the spirit. So we can imagine now the pull that that baby's gonna have and what is going to happen now. So it was it was it was beautiful, but this one was a little bit sad. We were all cheering on for baby Volpini. Come on, come on! But it's important though that they did share that with us, so we can have an idea of what happens. Not to judge, but I think it's more to learn, to say, hey, look, this is what happened, and that's it. So I really enjoy reading those chapters. They were very, very enlightening and just more knowledge. So, yeah.
They're very pretty. And those two stories that you brought for us, they really reminds us of what Emmanuel tells us, that our mind is the mirror of life everywhere. Of course, we're going to live what we're thinking, and this mental attitude, and we've talked a lot about that here. This mental attitude is everything, and once I talked with Vanessa, our dear friend Vanessa here from Quebec Radio, about this. When are we gonna live this reiterated things that we're always thinking? When are we gonna live this? And we're thinking. When all those things are gonna happen, and we are already living them.
Yeah.
This teaching from Emmanuel, it's really worth paying attention, because our mental attitude really can change our future for the good side or for the bad side. And we just heard about that from this beautiful stories that Nora brought us. Chris, do you want to say something, bro? I think Chris is
Oh,
frozen again. Yes.
Just
perfect.
He's frozen.
It's a perfect
mm,
picture.
Yes.
If I froze, I would have froze like, how it freeze.
Yes, Chris is always so chic. Even frozen. Okay, bro, you can say whatever you want. You can go ahead. So sorry.
just the technology of that Andrea bring us about mental, about magnetize, because the same thing, you have to learn how magnetize, how uh, edify our thoughts. It's a magnetize. You can create, like you said, you have to think, you create. So it's a new technology that we have to learn. Just just thank you.
Oh, I thank you guys always. Dear, do you want to say something before we close the live?
It's just fascinating, all the chapters, and just to close this, the prayer. I know in a lot of these, like in Raquel's case, that Jesus Christ conscious home and spirit was there. It was was so beautiful to keep that in mind when if we're pregnant or thinking or we're around this, being that it was talking about that life and to appreciate it more and even ourselves. And there's a lot of new technology just to, from Chris. Like there's so many things that I can't even imagine. There's a lot of gene editing techniques and stuff that are coming in. And to always remember, I think was writing a paper on this because in the end is that humility, that humbleness, and to understand that there's already harmony in nature. And if we maintain ourselves connected to this, the technology will start to come and things will right because we become more, our morals are set in place. So like the more we work those morals and those ethics, right, the science will come so that we can be ready to use it for the right purposes for all of this stuff that it's there. So I think we're heading in that direction. I mean, it's just little by little, and I'm just very fascinated by that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Me too. I'm very impressed by these books. It's really, really interesting. And a thing that really touches my heart is that every day that we read those books, we remember the gospel of our Master Jesus. This is so powerful. Seeing that Jesus, he couldn't say everything, but his speech had so much power and knowledge and technology and filled with loads of unimaginable things for that time. And as time goes by, so slowly we're gonna discover everything that Jesus has brought us. This is very, very, very pretty. I think it's really powerful that these books always are remembering us how amazing Jesus' speech is. This is very special. Thank you guys so much. I want to thank everybody that is here with us. Loads of friends here. Elaine, Marisa, Karina, Gislene, our great friends that are here with us. Thank you guys so much. We
Thank
love
you.
you all. See you guys next week for the final day of this amazing book. We're gonna finish one more
Wow.
book. Thank the Lord. Yes. Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Bye
night.
Thank you.
bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.